Good morning, everybody. I am Anusha from CSC department, working as assistant professor in Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. In my videos, I was discussing about the subject programming with objects. It is based on Java. So in today's video, we will be discussing about two programs. The first program is to develop a user interface to perform integer division, and the second one is to build a traffic signal type of swing program. So let's move into that. So the first question is about write a program that creates a user interface to perform integer division. The user enters two numbers in the text fields num1 and num2. The division of num1 and num2 is displayed in the result field when the divide button is clicked. If num1 and num2 were not integers, the program would throw an number format exception. If num2 were 0, the program would throw an arithmetic exceptions displaying the exception in a message dialog box. So here we are going to this is how the output will look like. This is our output. So here we are developing a swing program which will take up two values, two inputs. These two inputs are divided when we click on the divide button, and its result will be displayed on the result field. So this is what we are going to develop. So for that, we have to import all these packages. We are importing all these packages for our program, and in our main method, we are creating the object of the logic of the program wherein we are implementing our logic. So here we are implementing the logic in the class build GUI, which is extending the JFrame and implements action listener. We are implementing this action listener so that when we have the event we are implementing the action listener interface to have event handling in the button. When we click the button, the program will extract the values of these two text fields, perform the integer division, and then write the result back onto the third text field. So this is what the logic is. So here we have on this the button on this divide button, we are implementing the action listener interface. We are registering this button for this action listener interface. So here, since we are placing all these components on a frame, so we are creating a frame named as actual window. Then we are having a panel. We are making use of a panel which is placed over the frame, and onto the panel we will be placing all these components. Then, since we are making use of three text fields, we are initializing them. The three J text fields: the num1 for the first parameter, num2 for the second parameter, and the result one for the printing the result. Then we have this button, J button, which is created for providing the button. Now we are giving a title for this frame, J frame, which is week 4. So we get week 4 over here for the frame. Then we are creating an empty panel. We are setting the container background as white. So color.white means color is a class inside the AWT, from which we can obtain the white color, which is a constant. So color.white will set the background color of the container to white. The container means the panel. It is the panel. The panel color will be set to white. Then we are adding the three text fields we are creating the three text fields, which will take around 10 columns. So 3 text fields are created. Then we are creating the button with the name divide. So that is why we have this divide written on the button. Then we are adding the action listener. We are registering the button for the action listener. That means when the button is clicked, some action will be performed. So this action listener the button which we are using here is registered with the action listener interface. So when we click the button, the action performed method inside the action listener interface will be invoked, and we are giving some implementation for the action performed method so that we can implement our logic as our requirement. So here we are registering the button with the action listener interface. The button is registered with the action listener interface for some event to occur. So the event which will occur here will be clicking of the button. So when we click the button, the action listener, the action performed method inside of the action listener interface will be invoked. Then we are adding all these text fields and the button onto the container, onto the panel. We are adding all these things onto the panel, and that panel is added onto the frame, onto the J frame. So the panel, after adding all the components onto the panel, we are adding the panel onto the frame. Then we are setting the frame size to 300 by 300 and its visibility is set to true, so that we can, while executing, we will see the output. Now here, this is the implementation of our implementation of the action performed method of the action listener interface. Now here, when we click the button, the event which will be generated will be the action event. So when we click that button, an object of action event will be created. So it will check whether there is any implementation for that particular event. So here we see that this action perform method is listening for that event to occur. So when that event occurs, this part will be done. This whole part, the body of the action perform method will be executed. Now what we are doing there? Here we are having two num values, two variables, num1 and num2, wherein num1 will read the first value and num2 will read the second value. Now here, what happens is that whatever we write onto the text field will be in the form of strings. So we have to convert that string into its particular form. That means if it is an integer, we have to convert it into integer. If it is a float value, then we have to convert into float. So according to the value we have given, that should be converted into its particular form. So in our example, we are taking only integers. So we are performing integer division. So the value which we are giving there should be converted into integer from string. So whatever value we are writing into the text field will be in the form of string. That string has to be converted into integer. So first we have to read the data from the, we have to extract the data which is written onto the text field. So our text field is named as textnum. So the getText method will retrieve the data which is stored onto the text field. So textnum1.getText method will take the value which is written onto the first text field. So let's say we have, in our example, we had given value 12. The value was 12. So that this method will extract 12, and now that has to be converted into integer. So the integer.parseInt, the parseInt method will convert this text 12 into integer and store it into num1. So we have num1 is equal to 12. In the same way, whatever text we had given 3 in this text field of second text field. So that 3 will be read in the text form by this textnum2.getText method, and that will be converted into integer and stored it into num2. So num2 will be 3. Num2 will be 3 now. Now we have to perform the division. So the question was to divide these two numbers. The question was to divide these two numbers and store the result onto the text field, onto the result text field. So we perform the division, and then the setText method will store the value which is obtained here onto the result text field. So we get 12 by 3 as 4. So the result text field value will be set to 4. So we get the value 4. We get the value 4 written onto the text field of the result. Now in case we give some value other than integer. So in case we give some characters, if we give some characters like a onto num1 or num2, then it will throw an number format exception, and we have to get an error message which will be displaying the enter only integers message. So here we are told to take only integers. So if we give any character value or some character value, then it is an exception. So in such cases, that exception message has to be displayed onto the dialog, will be displayed on a dialog window. So on the dialog window, we will find the message to give a message to enter only integers. So to display that dialog message, we make use of the J option pane class and the show message dialog method. So this method will place this particular error message onto the frame. So when we so on the frame, so if we in the case here we had given the so if in such cases we will get an error message like this, a dialog box like this, wherein you get enter only. It will give enter only integer, enter only what integers. So in case we give like, let's say a or b here, and when we click divide button, then the error message enter only integers will be displayed. And now this now in case we give the value 0. So if we give in this case here again, since the divisor is 0, there cannot be any division operation. It is an arithmetic exception which is generated when we divide by 0. So if we give the divisor and 0, and when we click divide, then this dialog box will be opened. So for displaying this dialog box, we are again making use of the J option pane and show message dialog to display the message divisor cannot be 0 onto the frame. So so this is the way by which we will develop a swing program to provide a user interface to perform integer division. Next, let's look into another program wherein we are implementing a traffic light. So in this case, we find we will get an output like this, and when we click on the red radio button, it will display the message stop. When we click the yellow button, it will display the message ready, and when we click the green button, it will display the message go. So this is what we have to do here in this program. So about this program, we are writing a Java program that simulates a traffic light. The program lets the user select one of the 3 lights, red, yellow or green with radio buttons. On selecting a button, an appropriate message with stop, ready or go should appear above the buttons in the selected color. Initially, there is no message. So this is what we are going to do. So for that, again, we are importing all these packages, and the class which contains main is the T lights, and we are creating an object of the driver class. Sorry, we are creating the object of the logic class. So in our class A, it is again extending the JFrame, and here we are implementing the item listener interface. So this item listener interface is used over the radio buttons. So in our program, we are making use of 3 radio buttons for red light, yellow light and green light. So they are mentioned by R1, R2 and R3. Then radio button means it is a set of buttons wherein we can select only one button at a time. So so how many ever radio buttons we want to maintain, then it has to be kept inside a button group. So when we include all the radio buttons onto a button group, then we can select only one button at a time. So when we select one button, the other two buttons will be in off mode. So let's say we are clicking on the red button, then you cannot highlight the yellow button or the green button. So likewise, we can go for, if you click on yellow light, the red and green will be off. Likewise, that is how radio buttons work. So once we create these buttons, 3 buttons, they should be added onto the button group to get that behavior. Now we are making use of 2 panels, P1 and P2, wherein one panel will be available here, and the second panel is available here. The first panel is to display the messages ready, go and stop, and the second panel is to place our radio buttons. Then now we are setting all our frames behavior. So we are setting the default close operation to exit on close. Then we are allowing it in a grid layout. So we have, since the frames layout is in grid layout, it will place the components, the 2 components in 2 rows and 1 column. Then the size is set to 800 by 400. Now P1 is the P is the panel for placing this the message which will be placed here, and P1 is the panel here. So this is panel P, and this is panel P, and this is panel P1. So both the panels are set in the flow layout manner, so that if all the components placed on the panel on these two panels will be in a line. So all the components will be placed in a line. Now we are creating a label L1. This label L1 is used to display the messages when the radio button is clicked. We are setting its font to Times New Roman. It will be bold, and the size is 60. So that is why we are getting huge images on the huge text on the first panel. So we are to apply this font onto this label. We are calling the set font method. So the set font method will place this font F, which is of Times New Roman, bold and 60 size, will be set for the label L1, and that label L1 is placed on the panel. Now we are setting the panel's background color to white, and that panel is also added onto the container. Onto the frame. Sorry, this panel is also added onto the frame. Now on the second, in the second panel, we are having one label with select lights and the 3 radio buttons. So we are creating a label with default string with select lights, and that label is added onto the panel P1. That means the bottom panel. Now we are creating 3 radio buttons, and we are assigning some color to it. So we are creating the first radio button R1 with red light, and R1's background color is set to red. So that is why we get this whole button red in color. So we are setting that radio button's color to red, and that radio button is added onto the second panel, the panel P1, which lies on the bottom. Now to these radio buttons, we are adding an item listener. So this radio button is getting registered for this particular event. Similarly, we are creating 2 more radio buttons, which is one in yellow light and another one in green light. So this radio button is in yellow light. We are setting the background color of R2 in. R2 means the yellow light radio button's color is set to yellow, and that radio button is also added onto the the bottom panel P1. Similarly, we are adding item listener event for this radio button. That means when we click that radio button, the message for yellow light, the message ready should be displayed on the first panel. So for that, we are registering this radio button with this particular event. Likewise, we are creating a radio button with green light. So we get the third button, radio button, and its color is set to green. It's the R3's background color is set to green, hence the color which is in green, and that radio button is also added onto this panel. So once this panel is added, once these to this R3 also that R3 is also getting registered with the item listener interface. So when we click any of those radio buttons, the particular message should be displayed. Now we had placed these buttons onto the panel. Now that panel is placed onto the frame. So add P1 means that panel P1 will be added onto the frame. Now to achieve the radio buttons behavior, we have to add the three radio buttons onto a button group. So we add these three. We create a button group and we add the red radio button, yellow radio button, and green radio button onto this button group, so that when R1 is clicked, R2 and R3 will be off. When R2 is turned on or we click it, R1 and R3 will be turned off, and when we click R3, R1 and R2 will be turned off. So at a time, only one button will be invoked. Only one button will be active. So to achieve that, we are adding all these three buttons onto this button group BG. Hence, we will get the it will obtain the behavior of that particular of the radio buttons behavior, to get the radio buttons behavior. Now we have registered the three. We have registered all the three buttons with the item listener interface. So when that particular event occurs, an item event object will be created, and when one of the radio button is clicked, an item event object will be created, and since this item state changed method is listening to that particular event, and on the occurrence of that particular event, this method will be triggered. So when this method is triggered, we are defining some operations to perform. So first we have to identify which radio button is being clicked. So for that, we are achieving at that point an item event object I was created. So we have to identify the source which created that event. So we have to identify the source which had created that event. For that, we call the getSource method. Now that getSource method is converted. After identifying that particular event or a particular source, that is converted into the radio button and stored onto the JB object. So now, depending on JB's value, these three are radio buttons, and the only difference among them is on the color and the text which is being applied. So we retrieve the text of that particular radio button by using the getText method. So for the red button, it will be displaying the red light. It will have the red light. For green button, it will have the text as green light, and for yellow button, it will be having the text field set to yellow light. So when we call this getText method, it will retrieve the text which is being stored on the. It will retrieve the text which is stored onto the text which is stored on the radio button. So for a red light, it will retrieve red light. and for the red radio button, it will get the text will be red light. So this jb.getText method will extract the text which is written on this radio button. So in case we had pressed the red light, then this case will be executed. So when we press the red light, the message the message stop must be displayed on the, this message has to be, see, we have clicked red light. So when the red light is clicked, we have to display the stop message on the output. So to achieve that, we are setting the L1s, the label ones. The label 1 means the one which is, this label is L1. So this value is set to stop. So we are setting the label 1's text to stop, and its color is also set to red. Its foreground color is set to red. So that is why we get the text in this text stop, and it is red in color. Now, in case we get the, when we click, if we click the yellow light, then we have to get the this text should be, the label's text should be set to ready, and its foreground color is set to yellow. So when we click this yellow light, the yellow light is clicked. So when the yellow button, radio button is clicked, we can notice that the other two are turned off. And the message to be displayed is ready. That message is displayed on the first panel. Similarly, we can have for green light also. So when we click on the green light, the text should be displayed as go, and its foreground color is set to green. So we have this, when we have this green light clicked, the message to be displayed is go, and that is also in green color. So this is, so on clicking any, see, when we click this green light, the other two, red light and yellow light, are turned off. So since we have added these 3 radio buttons onto the button group, we could achieve that behavior. So this is how we implement or simulate a traffic signal. So that is all for today's video. And in today's video, we had discussed about a user interface to perform integer division and to simulate traffic signal. So to prepare those programs, I had referred the complete reference textbook 9th edition, and these 3 websites, the Java T Point Oracle website, and IIT Samantha Sirs from IIT Kharagpur. These 3 websites were referred to develop that program. So thank you for watching my video. That's all for today.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.